Hello everyone, we are from Pavitra Astrology Center. In the last two videos, we did some research on some interesting topics such as the planetary combinations for traveling abroad and doing higher education. And the second video was about the planetary combinations for getting a government job at a very young age. In today's video, we'll just kind of discuss about a general topic, how to read a birth chart. So this will be a two-part video. In the first part, I'll discuss about the ascendant and the strength of the ascendant, the 5th and the 9th lord, and the 2nd and the 10th lord. In the second part, I'll just discuss a little bit more about the 7th lord and a few other planetary placements. Okay, let's start with the ascendant. As I've said in the previous videos, the most important thing in any horoscope is the ascendant and the ascendant lord. So you may have so many yogas. If you actually open YouTube, there are tons and tons of yogas and Vedic astrologies that many people would be explaining. But if you want those yogas to work in your horoscope, you need to have a strong ascendant and the ascendant lord. When I say a strong ascendant, what it means is we don't want the ascendant lord in 6th, 8th or 12th house. And we don't want the 6th, 8th and 12th lord in ascendant. Okay, let's take an example. Okay, let's take a Capricorn ascendant. We know the ascendant lord is Saturn. We don't want Saturn in the 8th house. Out of the three malefics, 6th, 8th and 12th, the 8th house is a very bad placement for the ascendant lord, and you just don't want that. The same thing applies to the fact that you just don't want the 8th lord in the ascendant. So in this case, that is going to be Sun. I mean, typically Sun and Saturn, they're enemies. Sun typically doesn't do good in Saturn's house. So when you have these kinds of placements, what happens is your young age will be very troubling. You will have a significant uphill battle. There will be lots of challenges. You won't get a big support from, let's say, your family, friends, or even from the societies. It will be a very troubling time sometimes. So the next thing is you just don't want the ascendant lord to be combust. So what does combust mean? Combust is nothing but when planets get very close with Sun. So what happens is when the planet becomes very close to Sun, especially under 10 degrees, typically the natural karakas of the planet is disturbed. Okay, let's take an example. So let's say you have the Sagittarius ascendant. The ascendant lord is Jupiter, and let's say you have Jupiter combust with Sun. It is conjuncted under 5 degrees. This kind of combination also gives a lot of challenges. This is not as bad as, let's say, having the ascendant lord in 6th, 8th or 12th house. It's just not favorable, and you need to be, whenever you have these combust, you need to be careful and you need to closely look into other planetary placements and other planetary strengths. So you need to check the strength of the 5th as well as the 9th lord. Let's say they look good, then it means that even the ascendant lord being combust, it's okay. So the strength of the 5th and 9th lord will still give a good life to the native. The third, and in my opinion, one of the interesting combination is friendly planetary combinations with the ascendant. I mean, in astrology, there are two teams, one under Venus and another one under Jupiter. Moon typically does not fall under any team, mainly because Moon is constantly moving. Let's say when the Moon is traveling under any of these planets' signs, it becomes a part of that team, and when it is traveling along any of these signs, Moon becomes a part of Jupiter's team. So let's again take let's take a Virgo ascendant. the ascendant lord here is Mercury. It will be extremely beneficial if you have the Mercury, Saturn, and Venus conjunction. Anywhere, even in the worst case, I have actually seen in some horoscopes, even if let's say it's in the 8th house, sometimes it gives very good life and good luck to the native, because they three are very friendly planets, and the placement of these three planets anywhere in the horoscope brings a good success and good professional and financial life to the native. Typically, Rahu falls he becomes a part of the Venusian team, and Ketu kind of becomes a part of the Jupiter's team. So let's say you also have Rahu to this party. It's even better. Rahu tries to amplify things. And let's say you run any of the planets dasha, that kind of a placement is very hard to get, and I've seen many horoscopes when you have these placements, these combinations, it gives an excellent professional and financial growth. And another thing is we need to check the strength of the 8th house. So 8th house denotes longevity, and you don't want the 8th lord afflicted. So what does it mean when I say the 8th lord is afflicted? Sorry about that. So let's take a Scorpio ascendant. So the 8th lord is Mercury here. Even though the Mercury and Rahu are friends, sometimes, especially for these enemy ascendants, you don't want Mercury conjuncting with Rahu, and let's say the Mercury is debilitated and it kind of conjoins with Rahu. It creates all sorts of problems in life, especially with respect to health related issues. And just add fire to this is just Mercury joining with Mars. Even though Mars is the ascendant lord, what happens is he also becomes the 6th lord, and joining with Rahu and Mercury gives a very deadly combination to the native. So you just don't want the 8th lord to be conjunct with either especially the 6th, or either Rahu or Ketu. So these are what we call as poisonous planets, and especially let's say the native also runs the Mercury dasha. It's by far the worst placement to have. So these are some of the basic rules about the ascendant and the 8th lord. Now let's look into the 5th and the 9th lord. So 5th lord denotes the good deed which you have done in your past life. We also call it as Purva Punya Sthana. The 5th lord also denotes your children, and you don't want any natural malefics and in the 5th house. You just don't. Let's say this is, let's take Scorpio ascendant, or let's take maybe a Leo ascendant. You just don't want Saturn and Mars in the 5th house. Even though Mars may be the Raja Yogadhipati for Leo ascendant, joining with, let's say, Saturn, Rahu, it's a very deadly combination, and it kind of creates a lot of trouble in, let's say, conceiving a child. Or let's say you have a child, then it gives constant worries and problems with respect to your children. The most important thing is the 5th and the next one is the 9th lord. The 9th lord is the Bhagyasthana. It just denotes the luck. Who doesn't want to have luck in their life? So let's just take the same example of 9th house. The Leo ascendant. The 9th lord here is going to be Mars, and what you really need is Mars joining with Jupiter. So favorable planetary combinations with respect to the 9th house. So as I've said in the previous videos, when you kind of analyze a certain house, a fifth house or a ninth house, you need to assume that house as the ascendant and kind of think what are the favorable planetary placements with respect to that particular house. So just in this scenario, the most beautiful placement would be Mars joining with Jupiter, and let's say you have Sun diagonally, aspecting both Mars. And this is an excellent combination. So the person with this kind of a placement would have a strong support from their father. The ninth house also denotes father. It also denotes luck, foreign travel, higher education. So these people can have some, let's say, inheritance from their father. So this is also an excellent placement, and you should not have a Venus or Saturn anywhere in this aspect or conjunction. Let's assume you have Venus, Saturn in the fourth house without any contact with the Jupiter or Sun. This is very few people get these kinds of conjunction, and you can check any person's horoscope where, let's say, the conjunctions or aspects among one team and they don't interfere with the other team. Let's say the Jupiter's conjunction or aspect doesn't interfere with the Venusian teams. The next most important rule is you just don't want the fifth and the ninth lord conjuncting with Rahu and Ketu. So let's say, let's just take the same example of Leo ascendant. You just don't want Mars joining with Ketu or Mars joining with Rahu. So it might appear that Mars is in his own house, but in reality you just don't get any benefits from Mars, and especially during its dasha. The worst combinations would be, let's say, if they are in 8th house, or let's say it is in 12th house. So whatever the bad effects which I'm mentioning here, it would be even more amplified. So you just don't want, in general, the fifth and the ninth lord joining with Rahu or Ketu. So let's move on to the last part of today's video, which is going to be the strength of the second and the 10th house. So you have a very strong basement. When I say a basement, what it means is you have a very strong ascendant lord, no issues with respect to the 8th house. You have a very strong Purva Punyasthana, 5th lord, no malefics, no afflictions. And let's say you also have a good 9th house, luck. So you are a very lucky person. The next thing to check is how is your second and the 10th house. The second house denotes your financial success. The 10th house denotes your career success and how authoritative you could be, and how, let's say, would you be would you be getting promotions, and would you be at a managerial level. So those are all the things which the 10th house denotes. It's a general rule. Whenever you have, let's say, a conjunction of second and 10th lord in anyone's horoscope, that's a very strong Raja Yoga. It just denotes enormous financial as well as a professional success. So as I have said before, when you analyze a certain house, just use that as ascendant. Okay, let's take a Taurus ascendant. We know the ascendant lord here is Venus, and the second lord here is Mercury. And the 10th lord for this ascendant is going to be Saturn. How do you want the planetary combinations to have a good success? The best and the most preferred combination, as I have said in the previous video, is you just want these two guys joined. These three guys conjoined. This is an excellent placement. And let's say you run the dasha of Mercury, Venus, and Saturn, you just get enormous success. The only caveat to this rule is you just don't want Mars aspecting, let's say from the 11th house, or Mars aspecting from the 8th house. You just don't want this. Or the same applies to Jupiter. Just don't want the Jupiter here. So whatever the thing I have said, it would be completely opposite during those dashas. And the same thing appears to the 10th house actually. So let's take a different ascendant. So for a moment, let's take a Gemini ascendant. So for a Gemini ascendant, the ascendant lord is Mercury and the second lord is Moon. So what you really want here is just favorable planets with respect to the Kataka Rasi. The Raja Yogadipati for Kataka Rasi is actually Mars. So the most favored place combinations would be Moon joining Mars. And let's say you have Jupiter aspecting from the 9th house. This is an excellent placement. Actually, if in the horoscope of late Chief Minister J. Jayalalitha, you will have Mars and Moon in the 3rd house. Because when you take the second house as ascendant, the Moon would be the lagna lord and Mars would be the Raja Yogadipati. It would be the 5th and 10th lord. And Jupiter would be also the 9th lord to the 2nd house. And let's say if you consider the 10th house, and with respect to the 10th house, which is going to be Pisces, the Moon would be the 5th lord and Mars would be the 2nd and 9th lord. So this is an excellent combination. Let's say you run either Jupiter Dasha, or let's say you run either Moon or Mars Dasha, you will have a tremendous success in your financial as well as professional life. Okay friends, this is kind of the end of the first part 1 of the how to read a birth chart video. If you have any questions, comments, please do type it. And if you want to have your chart consulted for any aspect, for any issues, let's say if it's be a personal issue, financial or professional, please do send an email to pavithraastrologyconsulting@gmail.com. Thank you.